Hey everybody, so awesome. I think we got 9 people in here. So if you noticed, I updated the slides this evening or this afternoon to tell people that there's a 10-minute wait because I feel like last week a lot of people left. So let's start out like we always do every week. If you could start throwing your name in the comments, that would be awesome so I know where you were tuning in from. And as you can see, I'm in a different room. Well, actually, it's my office. So, oh, hey, Jan. Awesome. I was wondering if you were going to pop in. I don't know if you've been in, but yeah, so I'm taking it to the next level. So I'm using my Nikon Z6 II as a video camera, which is super cool. So hopefully the video looks a lot better. I'm using my lights tonight to light everything up, make it all fancy. So I guess we're taking all this to the next level. So perfectly, I got 10 people on here. Anybody else want to comment where they're at? Oh, awesome intro. Well, yes, that was a little bit of Canva. Farmer girl here. See, I got my hat on, my ANF hat on tonight, just for you, Pamela. As my wife says, I have a plethora of hats. So hopefully everybody can hear me well and things are going to go. So we will get started here. So tonight I'm going to talk about one of the most super coolest, favoriteest things that I love to photograph because I can do this any time of the year. I can do it winter, fall, summer, spring, crappy light, great light. It's amazing. So we're going to talk about ICM, or what we call international intentional camera movement. Boy, if I could talk tonight. So if anybody's got any questions, just throw them there in the chat. Awesome, Tom. Looks great. That is good to know. So what you can do is throw your questions as I'm kind of speaking there, and I'll pop them up on the screen and answer them as we go through. So I got about 21 slides. I'm pretty sure we're going to have time tonight to answer any photo questions about ICM or even questions that are non-related to ICM. I am more than welcome to answer. I love doing that each week as well. So let's get started here. So I'm going to pop up our slides. Awesome. Alexa did her job. Yes, Connie. Connie is awesome. She's showing up every week because Alexa reminds her. So intentional camera movement. This is something that I started. Well, let's just get into the slides because I'm going to get ahead of myself. So why I started. This is exactly why I started. So I would say about probably longer than I always think time is shorter than it actually was. I would say, well, Jesus, probably when I was at PhotoPro. So that will be 5 years of May I've been gone. So for me, I was really getting sick and tired of sitting on YouTube and everybody's like, photos have got to be sharp. They got to be this, they got to be that. Like all these things, if you're not doing A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, it's no good. But I always say the rules are meant to be broken to a point. So I was like, well, what can I do? So I'm thinking, So I thought I was onto this worldly thing. I'd never seen this before. And it's I'm going to start out. I'm just going to make a blurry picture on purpose. Why not, right? So as I was sitting there, this first image here, you'll see, this is actually of a cornfield here, out by Benton County somewhere. But when I did that, I went and bought this video tripod head because it was fluid, so it was really smooth, and I had all this plan, and I was moving it, and then I was getting bored really quick. I was all I'm doing is movement up and down, and you can only do so much with that movement. So I'm going to go through tonight different movements, and I'm going to call them the curve or the U. That's crap I've made up. I don't know how technical those are, but that's what I call it. It kind of refers to the movement. But I was really getting tired of just always having to be perfect. So that is totally why I started ICM. But I think there's a fine line. So let's touch base on that a little bit. There's a very fine line, I think, what's ICM and what's totally just a screwed up photo, to be honest. I think when somebody looks at your ICM work, it's got to look like it's purpose-driven. For some reason, you did it this way, not that it was an accident. Ooh, I'm getting ahead of myself. There we are. Forget there's a delay. So what do we look for in an ICM? And all these little symbols mean something to me. So when we're doing ICM or intentional camera movement, don't think about it as it's just kind of when I first started, I was really? I can do whatever I want, when I want, how I want. It's no big deal. There's no rules to this. And I don't want to call them rules as much as there's things that I didn't think composition was key or light. You could just do whatever, whenever. And partial of that is true. But the first thing we're going to look at is that little light bulb. And what do we call that? Well, that's light. Light still plays a key role. If you have flat light in a regular photograph, it's flat looking. If you've got, that dramatic light coming from clouds, even if it's all that's blurred out, with your movement, your slow shutter speed, it totally still brings that mood and that feeling to an image. So you got to look at light. Those three little boxes there, we got to look at shapes. How maybe the landscape is, or the subject in theory is how it's shaped and how those things all play together. And then you got the little color wheel, because color, if you've got something that's really brown and drabby and old and that's what it looks like in the photo. So you got to find color. Maybe it's even the blue sky and a brown, drabby kind of boring. Like, let's call Iowa in the winter. Everything is brown and dead. But we get clouds still in the sky. We still get color. We still have color from the sunset. You got to start playing with those colors and that drabbiness in the foreground, middle ground, and background, and bringing that sky in. And I'm going to talk about things we're going to have to do, not in theory with that, but things that how we're going to have to learn to see and think. Then the next thing, look at the sky. I just kind of touched base on that, but you got to have some clouds. Even in a good photograph, I mean, you have a beautiful photograph, and I think if your clouds are kind of wonky or they're just not there, it doesn't make for an interesting photograph as you had hoped. So I think always having something in the sky makes it more interesting photograph, and ICM is the same way. And then there's that little smear at the top. That is texture. Texture still plays a key role. If you've got crunchy, dry grass, that comes across. All of that is still going to come in. And then we've got the two colored circle there, contrast. You still got to have contrast in a photo. It makes things pop. It makes things blend together. And these are all things you've got to think about. Totally just got to think about all those things. So, and then how they all kind of work together. So take your simple composition, lighting, your basics of photography. Everything we know and learn still plays a key role. So learning to see. We know how to see. Like, I like to explain, like, the first time I went from a DX format or a crop sensor camera to full frame. I was using full frame lenses on a crop sensor body. That is a different look because you have a full frame body has a 0 magnification factor. So 24 millimeters is 24 millimeters. If you go to put a 24 millimeter lens on a crop, it's like a Nikon. They're all different. They're all different on the crop factor, but I'm not going to get into that too much. But a 24 millimeter on full frame is 24 millimeters. A 24 millimeter on a Nikon or Sony per se body is going to just round it up and call it, say, 35. It's 24 times 1.5, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So what happened is when I was used to shooting that way, I would I could envision a photograph, I could pull the lens out of the bag, slap it on the camera. I knew exactly where I wanted it to be. I could stay on the same spot, frame it up, and when I went to full frame, I was like, whoa, 24 is a lot wider. I took a step forward. Nope. I had to rethink on how I see. So when I was starting ICM stuff, I had to rethink on how I see things. I had to start looking at how the landscape forms and the shapes and all that. And then I had to try to envision, how is all this going to blur together? How is it going to mesh together in what way? Then I had to start learning how to see these different movements. Like I was like, oh, okay, rolling hills that were overlapping. I was like, click, whip. I look and be like, doesn't look good. And then I started to notice as I experimented and played around that if you start moving with the movement of the landscape, it totally works. And then, so then I start looking at, what technique am I going to use? Am I going to kind of do the curve or the roll, as I call it, or the left to right panning? Maybe if I got a lot of vertical vertical lines, let's go there. If I got a lot of vertical lines going straight up, I'm going to do a movement from top to bottom or bottom to top. So I had to think of that. So I still had to come up with, I'll talk here at the end about next week. I have something scheduled, but we're moving it. But let's get back to ICM. Is how all that played together, how I had to see it. And the next one we're going to talk about is, and the next live, in a few Saturdays from now, is the photographic process. Everything we do to take it from up here and put it in this thing right in front of us up to our eye, our camera. And then how do we take that and then put it into our post-processing. So you got to do the same thing with ICM. You've got to go in there and you've got to start thinking differently. It's a landscape. You know, I'm not trying to get it all tack sharp. How do I get it flowing? Then I got to think of shutter speeds and apertures and all that good stuff. And aperture and that all plays a role in light, and I'll talk about that here momentarily. So settings, let's talk about settings because everybody wants to always know settings. We'll talk about gear too. I'm not a huge, well, I used to be a huge gear nerd, but I'm still am now with all this fun stuff that I'm doing. I'm getting more into the video stuff, which is awesome. But settings. So people say, well, Justin, what's your settings for ICM? Well, that first little stopwatch there, that's shutter speed. So I'm not going to say that this is the way to do it. It's not. My way is not your way, and your way is not mine. But these are starting points. This is a total experiment all the time. You're going to start finding a certain lens you like. You're going to start finding the shutter speed you like. And a lot of shutter speed is going to be based on how fast you're moving the camera. If you're doing a real slow pan, you're going to need a longer shutter speed. I prefer to do the quick whips, all this stuff. Because for me, I run about 1/4 to 1/6 of a second. The other tip that I would throw in there is if you have any vibration reduction, which is like image stabilization from Canon. If you have that on your lens, turn that off, because I noticed I wasn't getting these real nice smooth blurs, and it was actually after I shut off my image stabilization that was counteracting, and it was actually my movement, just that little quick jerk before I whipped it, it was counteracting that, and it wasn't working, and I was like, oh. The other thing I noticed was when I switched to mirrorless. A mirrorless camera, at least the Nikons, and I think they all do, is they have a mechanical shutter that actually goes opens and clicks, and then there's an electronic shutter. I couldn't figure out why there was this delay all the time. It was the freaking electronic shutter. It wasn't the actual, the electronic shutter. It wasn't the real shutter clicking. So then I had to turn that off. So I was learning, because when I took the Nikon Z6 II out for its first test spin, that's what I did, was ICM. And it didn't work. I was super frustrated, and that's why. So let's talk about aperture. So we want to be roughly where I start, between 1/4 and 1/6 of a second. Now, the lens that I'm using is a 70 to 200 2.8 normally. That's my normal lens. I like the focal length. It works because when I have a longer focal length, what also happens is I can actually blur that a little bit more. Or I shouldn't say blur it. It exaggerates the movement, especially if you shoot a slow shutter speed at a long focal length and you barely jiggle a little bit, and you're like, why is it not sharp? That is exactly why. Same thing with ICM. Aperture. The big thing for aperture for me, it's not because we're blurring the whole image. We're blending the sky and the foreground and the background all together. But what happens is I use my aperture to control the amount of light. If it's a really, really bright day, I go to f/22 or f/16 to really take that. You know, if it was 2.8 and a big opening, I'm going to squeeze it down really tiny, put that little tiny pinhole in there, and what that's going to do is let in less light. So guess what that's going to do? Bring my shutter speed down to allow me to get, on a bright day, not always, we'll go there in a minute on the next slide, enough light to knock it down to give me that shutter speed where I need. ISO, I'm pretty set. Unless I'm doing really low light stuff, but I don't. I will usually shoot it the lowest I can get my camera to go. Most cameras are probably at least 250. I know my D850 will go like 64 or 25, roughly somewhere around there. It's a low one, but I set it to the lowest because I don't want to be that sensitive to light, because I want that shutter speed to drop. And then, like, if it's too slow, then I'll open up my aperture. So the other thing is manual. I would recommend to be on manual. I know last week we had a question about, well, do we use semi-automatic modes or full manual? And I said, I really don't care how to get the image. Now, could you go into TV mode on your Canon or S on your Nikon, or S on your Sony, and pick a slow shutter speed and let the camera figure out everything else? Yes, you can. And I've never done it. I just like to control everything manually. So if you've got questions, feel free to throw them. I know we've got a couple of people who've popped in here, but on the chat, and I will pop them up as we go through. But yes, so quick recap on settings, probably f/16, f/22 on aperture, lowest of ISOs you can get, preferably 250, 100 or below, and shutter speeds between a 1/4 and 1/6 of a second. That's where I like to be. So gear. This is the easiest thing, because you don't need a bunch of gear. You got to have three things for sure, maybe four. You got to have a camera. Can't take a photo without a camera. You got to have a lens, and I don't care what lens. If we're shooting low light sports, we have to. I'm going to say we have to have a 70 to 200 2.8, because that's the best lens to use in theory, or a 2.8 aperture lens to let in all that light and to bring the subject in closer. Maybe for landscape, they want wide angle. You can have any lens you want, any lens, and ICM is going to work. Then we got that third one. That's a filter. Now, I'm not talking like a clear filter or a colored filter. If you can't go a really low ISO, like there's days I will go out and I will set it to f22 for my aperture. I will go to ISO 100 or ISO 25 on my camera. I still can't get that shutter speed where I need. So what do? I have to use a thing called an ND filter, also known as a neutral density. Now, what that is, think of it as welder's glass. They come in square, they come in plastic, they come in glass. They're ones that screw in. Those are the three types, really. I prefer screw in. They come in varying degrees of density. So think of it as welder's glass. They're dark, you can't see it through it while you're welding. Same thing with a neutral density. Now, what the neutral density is going to do is going to allow me to take the light down even more, knock down the light to give me the proper shutter speed I want. I love my variable neutral density. Now, most of the time you need to buy a filter that fits your lens. Like, let's say your lens is a 77 millimeter. You're going to want to get on roughly maybe just a mid-range 5-stop filter. But sometimes 5 stops is too much or not enough. And when I'm talking about 5 stops, that's taking down 5 stops of light, which I could get into more, but we won't for the most part at this moment. But just know that an ND filter is going to help block out light. Now, what I love is I have a Koken Pure Harmony, which I believe have been discontinued. But there's a lot of other brands out there. I do believe Koken, let me think. Yeah, Hoya. Hoya is the other one. They make it very, very nice. Now, neutral densities are not cheap. You need to get a good one. If you get especially in a variable, because a variable spins, it goes from a light, barely taking down the light, to really dark. So I can vary it. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just throw in my neutral density filter, get my settings where I want them, and I will spin my neutral density to the point where my little light meter goes whoop right to the middle, and that's where it stays. So that's how I do it. Now, can you do it other ways? Yeah, you can get just a 3-stop filter, a 5-stop, a 7, whatever. All these different stops. So now you have 10 filters in a bag, and you got to carry them all around. You got to get varying ones for sizes, but we won't get into that too much. But just know with ICM, we can do it with any lens, any camera, any time of day, anytime. That's what I love about it. Let's say you go out to shoot or photograph, let's say, I don't know, landscapes. You're just not feeling it. Do ICM. Do something abstract. Or you go out looking for a particular shot and you can't find it. Do ICM. So now we're going to talk about the movement. And when I talk about the movement, this is this movement, that movement, the weird whippies and all that good stuff. So what we're doing is moving the camera with that slow shutter speed. Now, when I said a little bit ago about shutter speed is going to be truly based off of whatever you feel comfortable with. But what happens is you're going to have to start, if you go too fast, you might get too much blur, or you might not get enough, things like that. So it's one of those things that you're going to have to play around. Now, here's the other thing I hate about ICM. The only thing I hate about it. Let's say you overexposed or the image is way too bright. You can't get the same flow. You're never going to get the same photo twice. That's what I love, is these are very abstract images. So, we can all go to Yellowstone or Glacier or whatever national park, and we can all take the same flipping photo. We can all stand on the same spot, all get different light, whatever. But we can all get a very similar photo. ICM, we can all go to the same spot, do the same thing, and it's all going to be different. So let's get into the movements now. These are all things I've made up. These are names that I've made up for myself. So don't think of these as these are technical terms. So the first one, I call it the whip. And you'll see it's circular. This is one that if you take let's see, the camera, go vertical or whatever, and whip it into a circular motion. And what happens is you get this curvature. Now, I shot it to the point where I cropped this a little bit too, but you can take this and find a point and get it in the middle or off center, whatever you want, compose it differently and whip it. Different shutter speeds, different. And the other thing you're going to do with this, you're going to take literally thousands and thousands of photographs and probably junk 99% of them. It's all experimentation. This was one that I did, I think, this spring. It's not my favorite, but it's just wanted to kind of show you what that whip action looks like. And you go from zero. Now, make sure if you're doing that, you've got like something like wrapped around so you don't drop your camera. But, you know, always have the strap around your neck or something because you don't want to slip and fall. But I like to do the whip. That's my thing. That one's kind of fun. I don't do that one very often. You can pick something. You can find something circular to try it on. You can, I don't know, it's one of those you just pick it, find something interesting, and see what happens. The U-shape. My friend, Karen, she called this like angel's wings or angels or something on Facebook when I posted it. This is literally wintertime, snow. I think it's just some grass or trees. And that's just kind of whipping in a U-shape, kind of like this. Now, sometimes you won't get the full motion as you go through because your shutter speed won't capture the whole thing. So you'll kind of get these, or this is kind of like where we can combine two motions together, where we can start combining these as we go through. This is kind of like that U-shaped movement, but at the same time with the diagonal movement. And it's kind of that whoop or that pull as you're pulling from top left to bottom right with a little bit of curve in there. And sometimes I can look at a scene and say exactly know what I'm going to be looking at. What was the object you shot? Pamela asked. So when you get in there, so I believe that was, that actually might have been trees. Because if you look in that right-hand corner, there's some very faint lines that go this way, and this way. So it may have been leaves on a tree, if I remember. I don't even remember to be exactly, but that would be the closest thing I can think of. But as you get in there, you can start combining these things and finding all these different movements and, you know, just experiment away. So I don't use this one a lot, but sometimes I will look at like maybe a branch on the tree. Let's use that for an example. And I'll kind of follow it and I'll look at it and kind of see where it flows. And then I'll just pick a point and I'll focus and I whip and do the thing. And then I'll look. And then maybe it's like, it was too fast, or usually I'm too slow where I don't get that good, nice blur. So you just look at the shape of something and then decide, do I want to whip it or do the U shape or the diagonal as we call it? So let's get into our next movement here. Any other questions as we're kind of plugging along here? No? Okay. Yes, the wave. So this is one where it's like the wave, literally like a wave. This is an image that it's kind of trickery. I did do the wave, but I did it vertically. So I went like this. Or it was a little bit like, I'll usually start from the bottom and point my lens down. As I whip up, I kind of like that. And, I hit my mic. But yeah, I go like this. But what I did with this image is, who says I have to keep it in that orientation? Turn it to a landscape. So then you kind of get that. So really what that is a tree right there through the middle. Well, yes. And then that little white and light colored and that blue is the sky. The other thing I should have mentioned, with the neutral densities being very expensive for a good one, because let me take 2 steps back. Neutral densities, if you get a cheap one, especially a variable, you'll get banding. Yes, that would be awesome on metallic. You know, I could spend thousands of dollars on metallic or metal prints. But what happens with the neutral density is they get banding. They get these weird bands that are like C shapes behind. You'll also get color shift. You will get color shift in almost everyone, and that's where I recommend to shoot raw so you can correct for the color. But if you don't have those, everybody should have a polarizer, because a polarizer does plenty of things in the world of photography, but it makes your skies deeper, darker blue. It increases saturation in your photographs. Totally helps that later in post-process, which I'll talk about a little bit, we don't have to worry about boosting the colors. But it also, remember that circular polarizer knocks down about 1 to 2 stops of light, just like an ND would. So again, you can take that photograph. I did the wave, but I did it vertically, so I went like that. I like to start from bottom to top. You'll start to find that these movements feel more natural. I'm a left to right person. I can't go right to left. It throws me off. So here, I always start at the bottom, bottom up. If I do top to bottom, I just don't feel like I can get that movement down real well. But once I start getting it, I say, ooh, whip up. But then turn it, hell, we could even go this way and diagonal, whatever you want. That's a great thing. We are doing abstract landscapes. There's no rule to say I shot it vertically. It's got to stay vertical. So let's talk about vertical movement. So this was probably pretty obvious of what it is. But see, I had grass in the foreground, grass in the background. Those are trees in the middle ground, those darker streaks that are all there. And when I see lots of vertical movement from foreground to sky, I go straight to a vertical movement. If I go right to left, it's not going to blur well. It's not going to blend, in my opinion, well, because I'm not following the movement of the landscape. But, I still, when I try to compose these images, I try to get foreground, middle ground, background, and sky still, because all those still play a crucial factor in giving a little bit of depth. Sometimes you have to do more cropping with these. Oh, Jan, thank you. This is one that's, I've got a couple of these, but this is probably my favorite one as well. Trees, I love trees. I'm looking for a group of birch trees, which are kind of hard to find here in Iowa, but because I want something that's really bright and white. And then the other thing is when I was talking about color and contrast, if you got a tree, it's all gray, it's going to be a gray streak. So if you find a tree that's got dark bark, it's even wet from, say, snow or rain, or even snow stuck to a tree, all that's going to blend in. So you still got to look for those little elements. And then as you start doing this, you're going to start finding that in your elements with everything, they'll all blend together. You'll start seeing this. When I first did it, this was really hard. Now it's more natural because I'm doing it. With anything in photography, you just got to get out and do it repeatedly over and over and over. But I love the vertical. I did try to put some settings down. All these, I think, for almost all the photos, I think that actually all are 6 of a second f22 at ISO 25. Yes, this is probably one of my all-time favorites. This one I've got, I don't know what to do with it. I'd love to see it really big, like 24 by 30. Yeah, 24 by 30 or 30 by 36 or something, or even bigger than that. But this one, I don't name my photographs normally, but this one I named Fire on the Lake. Because what it is, this was the vertical movement with a little bit of I was trying to go vertical with a little accidental wave put in. Like sometimes when you move, you're not going to be straight. And things are going to kind of curve. You're going to kind of move and go with things. And that's okay. That's the awesome thing. It's going to do that. But this is a lake. I think it's actually, it used to be called Squaw Creek. I have no clue what we call it now, and that's what I'll probably always call it. But what this is the frozen lake behind with grass in the front. Just that yellow grass that we get after it's all dried out. And that's a little bit of a vertical with a little bit of shakiness in there on my part. Not like I tried to put it in there. And then, simple as that. And then obviously I'll go through post-processing what I did in a lot of these in a little bit. So we are right at 8:29. So we might be done a little early tonight, and that is fine, because that will leave us time for questions. Any questions so far? Or comments? Let's keep rolling. So the vertical. So this one was again, vertical, bottom to top. Simple as that. One fluid movement from bottom to top. And you want to stay fluid. Don't stop or jerk or robot in it, because it's not going to work. You got to get that whoop. And here's another trick. Start moving before you click the shutter. Start at the bottom, and as you come up, I like it to be a surprise. As I start at the bottom, I will slowly press down. And thanks, John. Wanatee Lake. That's going to take a while for me to remember. But start that button halfway down. And as you push that halfway down, you're going to start getting a little bit of focus. Oh, the other thing, I don't autofocus. I put it manual focus because it's easier that way. It's not going to spit and sputter and I'll actually take a photo. So I'll push that halfway down. As I whip up, I'm slowly depressing the shutter. And I want it to be a surprise. Like click, then it happens. But I don't stop after I hear the click. I follow through with the motion. So bottom to top, a little bit of pressure on the shutter button as we go up, click, and keep following through with that motion, because I found out if I stopped, the exposure may not have been completely done, especially at a slower shutter speed, and then I stopped and it doesn't look right. So all this is literally, you can see the little right hand corner, the little color, all that white there in the middle and the dark. All this is frozen water, it's a lake, out at Wikiup Hills, and that's grass, little patches of grass. And I'm still looking for movement in the image this way. So I had a lot of grass this way, but again, almost kind of like a leading line that pulls you up through that bottom left-hand corner to right. So all this still plays. Remember, all this stuff we've always learned still plays into what we want to do to create our final photographs. So, the right to left or left to right movement, that's what I call it. So this one is actually bottom, probably third-ish. That's just shoreline down at Coralville Reservoir. That middle blue is the water out on the lake. And that background is, well, yeah, almost the background, is your like trees on the other side. And then that very top is your sky. It was around sunset, so you get that little pinkish sky, whatever you want to call it. But it's simple, left to right or right to left. Like I said, I like to go left to right. I'm doing that when I got a lot of kind of conflicting things. Like you'll see a lot of stuff like the water, all that kind of comes kind of overlapping in layers. And you'll notice that too. I got layers as we go through the image. And that's going to help bring you in. So again, foreground, background, middle ground, all that good stuff. But this is probably what I do the most. I would say probably one of the most of is the right to left movement. Sometimes I go, well, sorry, I go left to right. Excuse me, not right to left. But either one will work. Gives you the same result. I just feel more comfortable with my movement from the left to right. So here's just another image. So this is when I'm talking about light. Because what happens is if we have flat light, we have flat images. So this was right behind my wonderful friend Diana's house. When she lived down in Amana, I was out just tooling around on the gravel roads. This was a storm. You get that real, kind of in that very top, you see that light patch. That's the clouds, the lighter color. That darkness, those are dark storm clouds, like north towards Cedar Rapids was a thunderstorm. And you got that nice bright kind of right there on the horizon. That was light. Those little, what I call God beams coming down through, that was lighting it. So it still plays an intricate role, light and color and all that, to give you an image. I have several of these where it's kind of where the light wasn't punching through the clouds. It wasn't as interesting. So light plays that integral role. So this one. So this one was in the spring. Again, this was the left to right movement. And you'll see that haziness out there. That's actually a farmer burning off a cornfield from fall. And all that color down in that foreground was a bean or a cornfield or something. It was a cornfield. But again, that little kind of that starts in that midsection right on the horizon and down in. That is one hill, and the other hill is tucking in. So all that plays in together. The lighting's still in there. And it was kind of a cloudy, that kind of weird Iowa spring day where it's kind of nice and kind of chilly and a little warm, but not great. And kind of got the grayness, but spring's kind of coming. And you start getting some color popping. That's when I like to photograph it as well because it works out great. The squiggle. This is a real technical one, the squiggle. Let's try something here. So single or multiple on the motor drive. And John, let me pop up John's question here. I'll get better at this. So single or multiple on the motor drive. So motor drive is like your continuous shooting. If you're on multi, you might get a couple of shots out of a single movement. Pixels are cheap, way cheaper than film. I do single. I've never tried multiple. I mean, I probably could probably give you the same kind of thing. Well, I wouldn't now. I don't know. That's a good question. I probably wouldn't use multiple on, continuous shooting because it's such a slow shutter speed. It'd be like clack, 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 where I just like the single. I actually might try that sometime. Not a bad idea. Give it a try. Yes, I probably should because for me, it's why not? So let's throw in the comments on the right, John, in the bottom right, or bottom right, it's my bottom right hand corner. Down, throw in the comments what you guys think this is. I'm just curious to see what people see. Because sometimes with ICM, you're going to make it pretty literal on what it is. You'll be able to tell. But other times, not so much. And I think I want ICM stuff to literally make people stop and look and think. We see so many, a dog. Actually, well, let's get 2 more comments up there. Come on. It's good to see you, Steven. I hadn't seen you pop in there. So awesome. So let's see. Come on. Come on. One more guess. Nothing. Okay. Bailiff, hey, Don said, hey, awesome. Good to see you, Don. Actually, it's a tree on the left side. That top squiggly weird blob in the top right-hand corner is part of the sky, and all that kind of orangish, yellowish, whatever, and brown, that's grass. Horse's mane, I like that. But see, this is what Daniel Boone's cap. What I love about this is, look, everybody has something different. So that's what I love about photography. We, as photographers, can capture a moment, make people think. Is really, think about it. We capture a moment, one moment. It's never going to happen again. Think of that. Isn't that super powerful? That we can capture with our camera one moment in time. It's never going to happen again. That 1/10 of a second, 100th of a second, 1,000th of a second, it's super cool, I think. I don't know, I'm getting all weird. But, we get to capture this, and now it's there. And people, as photographs stop to tell a story and grab people's attention, that's what I want these to do. I want people to stop and look and say, okay, is it a bale of hay? Is it a horse's mane? What is it? And people think. Because I don't think we do that enough. Is people just don't stop and look. We all see, we're inundated by freaking billions of photos a day, literally. So I love that when I'm scrolling through. If I am on Instagram, scroll, and I see an ICM or something super interesting, I stop, back up. I'm like, ooh, it makes me stop. That's when I think you got a good photograph going. So the diagonal. The diagonal is however you want to do it. You're moving with diagonal. So this this one on the left is actually, that bottom is a stream in the fall. So you got some coloration in the water. That little streaky in the middle there going this way, that's some of the tree color, and then that's our sky. And it's all blending in. Reminds me of very Star Wars-ish kind of thing. And that bottom one is grass in that bottom right-hand corner. A little bit of break with some more grass and a little shade, I think. And then that top part is ice on a lake. So again, the diagonal, just find things, try it differently. Shoot it vertically, shoot it horizontal. Start mixing these in together. And again, the diagonal. So if we go back a couple, we had that one picture where I went vertical, same image, just with a different camera motion. So like anytime when we go out and take a photograph and you shoot it as a wide angle, we shoot it as a vertical, we shoot it as a landscape, and we might shoot it with a telephoto and a mid-range lens, whatever. Do the same with ICM. Try it vertically. Try it for the left to right or right to left movement. Try it with the U-shape or the whip or whatever. Try different ones, because you will find like, whoo, once you kind of see it, then you start rolling with it, and you'll start to see certain scenes work better with certain movements. But I'm not going to say that you have to. If everything's moving this way diagonally, you don't have to use a diagonal. Use the whip or the U-shape, whatever. So this one here, when you get into it, this was kind of like a little bit of vertical, but more off kilter, not that real diagonal, but this is simple. Grass, prairie grass, a muddy trail, and brown trees in the background. And the other thing that I should mention with ICM is we're taking these really mundane, boring, crappy, normal landscapes that I wouldn't photograph all tack sharp and bringing an interesting element and making this whole thing blurred. Bringing something that's super boring, making it interesting. So our last slide here is, let's talk about a little bit about post-processing. So these are the two things I use to post-process a lot of things. 99.9% of my post-processing on ICM or any of my work comes from Lightroom. I like Lightroom, works for me. Taking the raw files, I dump them in there. I can organize and catalog, all that good stuff. It's all there. I use Photoshop in a very, 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 very basic way. I add borders and strokes to my images. That's all I do in Photoshop. I do use some of their auto tone and auto color sometimes because it works better than what I can do or care to do. But my normal processing of post-process for images is same thing I normally do on a landscape: exposure, saturation, vibrance. I prefer vibrance over saturation just because I think you can get a little carried away with saturation and become oversaturated if you're not careful. But at the same time, I'm still doing contrast. And I can use a filter, like a radial filter if I wanted, or a graduated filter in Lightroom, and darken certain areas. You can burn and dodge. There's nothing wrong. I mean, you can take this to the next level if you want. I mean, I just thought of this at the top of my head right now. You go into Photoshop if you wanted and take 2 ICMs and maybe throw them on a masking layer and take the opacity down and start making like multiple exposures. I don't know. This is like we're like barely scratching the surface this evening with this whole ICM thing. We could go nuts if we want. But post-processing is very simple, very simple. Same with I do everything, exposure, highlights, whites, blacks, shadows, contrast, nothing fancy. I don't do anything crazy. So let's see, that is my last slide. So let's open it up. We've got, I don't know, about 15, 20 minutes. So let's roll. Oh yes, John says, I see lots of oversaturated images these days. Totally agree with that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, maybe if you're going to go into like oversaturating on purpose, but I think a lot of the oversaturation I see is on accident or over-sharpening. Ooh, over-sharpening. I'd rather be a little soft than over-sharpening. Nobody wants crunchy photos, but unless you're making it on purpose. But any questions on ICM stuff at all? Any comments, questions, concerns? Hopefully everybody's like enjoyed this evening. The other thing, let me mention this before I totally forget. So this is obviously available on Facebook after we're done with the live, but I just started a YouTube channel. So you might see other videos from me besides this, but this is going to be a playlist. I've already got last week's uploaded to YouTube. So go to Justin Tedford Photography, hit the like and subscribe thing, and then you get notified and all that good stuff. But all this is available to watch later. Share it with your friends, family, all that good stuff, and share it out there. I want all this to be an educational thing. So Stephen says, were they all freehand versus tripod? Yes, I use a tripod very rarely anymore. It's all freehand. I should probably pop that up there just so we can have it. Huh? So yes, it is all freehand. I don't like the tripod. The tripod is too restricting for ICM. Unless I want a very perfectly straight lines, then I will go and get the fluid video head. And then wonderful Jan Kreit says, I could see making some ICM photos and using them as a background in some of my background replacement images. Yes, you could. I love that stuff, Jan. So I am in a cool little photo group where we meet, I think once a quarter with Jan and a couple other photographers. We print stuff, and Jan does these really cool things in photo. She's got more skill in Photoshop than I do. She takes these beautiful images that she already takes. And I'm not just saying that because you're hanging out here, Jan. You do create beautiful work. And then she takes them and takes these like, she makes works of art, literally is what she does. She takes these textures and puts them in Photoshop. I think I'd love to see that. That's what I'm going to challenge you to, Jan. I want you to go out and try it. What did Tyler say? Also, the video quality is so much better with the new setup. Yes, it is, because I'm running 1080p, and I got this cool little thing called CamLink, I think, or whatever for. It runs everything through high def and all that fun stuff. So I've actually I'm running off one camera battery, so hopefully it's going to last this whole live stream. But I got an AC adapter coming. I'm just getting into this and I'm enjoying it. So as long as you guys keep showing up, I'm going to keep doing this. So super awesome. But yes, the video quality is a lot better. And I finally, after figuring it out this afternoon, half the day, I'm actually working with three lights. One here, one there, and one up there. So hoping like I can set up a little studio out here outside my office, because I'm literally jam-packed. My brother was over a little bit ago. That's Tyler, and had a few things on there that I was showing him. And he can say, yes, I'm all jammed in here this evening. So Let's see. Oh, love the camera settings with photos. Awesome. Thank you, Connie. Yes, Jan, you should. I think it would be. It's been fun. Really enjoyed this. You're a good teacher. Thank you. That's what that's what I'm here to do. So is teach, teach, teach. So any other questions? Like a tuna can, Tyler says. Yes, it is. I need about 10 more feet that way and about 10 more feet this way. But I'm just hoping I can match my lighting next time. So that's why I just want to get everything and set it up. And these are actually modeling lamps off studio strobes. These aren't even LEDs. So I am looking for a set of LEDs. So let's talk about enough of that. Jan should do a guest appearance. You know, that's been my key too. I thought about maybe doing a one guest appearance once a month, which would be awesome. Oh, but next week. So next week and the following week, if you go out to my Facebook page, I do have like a schedule. I'm probably not going to do them the next 2 Saturdays, sorry, because we're headed to Disney World. So next Saturday, I'll actually be on a plane or somewhere where I can't do it. And the next Saturday, it's hit and miss. I may or may not be back. But they've got us flying north to south. It's ridiculous. So the next 2 weekends, I apologize. I'm not going to do anything, but I don't want to tell you guys, hey, I'm going to be here. And then we're sitting here in an airport on a phone. It's not going to be any fun. So if I would say maybe, just maybe in the next couple Saturdays, I may pop in live just with no fanciness on the phone and just say, hey, what's up? And maybe do a quick Q&A, but we'll see. Depends on if I've got time or if I'm on a flight. Have fun in a safe time, we will. Do some Disney ICM. I am going to take the camera with me. That might be kind of interesting. This is our last time at Disney. We went 4 or 5 years ago, and we said if we're going back, we're going for Halloween. That's what we're doing. So, so let's see here. Any questions at all? Any questions? Any ICM stuff? Any photo-related questions? I don't know anything about the setup I did. Kind of impressed with myself. Oh, that fun little color over. Yeah, right there. Woo. My screen is all backwards on me. That's some LED lights, and I need to get some more to run around the top. But so, any other questions? If not, I'll wrap this puppy up for the evening. No. So again, go out to YouTube. This will be on Facebook. Please share. We're getting about 10 people a night, which I'm super stoked about. If you have an iPhone, you can get a program called Slow Shutter Speed to do your ICM. I like that idea, John. John's awesome. If you don't know John, John's a retired commercial photographer. I think John and I did a live together. Now that I got all this fanciness, I really should bring back doing a guest appearance with people. But again, thank you guys for all coming this evening, guys and gals. Next 2 weekends I'll be off, but we'll be back in October, and I'll just continue that. I'm going to try to do the schedule each month so you guys can see what's coming up. Yes, John just put in there catchlight.ws. That is John's website. Go check it out. Super cool. But again, thank you guys for coming. All this is going to be on YouTube. If you've got ideas for some of these, or maybe somebody you want me to call and have on the show, I guess I could call it a show now. But it is under Late Night Exposures on a playlist. It's the only thing I have on YouTube right now. I do have some stuff in the works. I've got some mics that I'm going to start using too for some video, but unfortunately it is not. One is broke. The screen stopped working and it's brand new. So I got to get those repaired. But as we go through there, oh yes, thank you, John. That was awesome. I'm enjoying it. So yeah, go out to YouTube. Please like and follow. There's no subscribers out there yet because I just created it a couple days ago, but you can search it under Justin Tedford Photography. If you haven't liked my Facebook page, go out there, like it, all that good stuff. Again, thank you, Pamela. Again, thank you. I cannot thank all of you guys enough for the support and everything. So let me know if you've got questions, maybe questions, ideas for a future show. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful evening, and we're out of here.